In this demo video of using Sqvi, let us create a report based out of these four tables: df14vd, tdef, info_tran, and tstc. Using these four tables, we'll create a report that will give us a list of transaction codes by modules in SAP. Meaning, you can enter a module like SD, PP, and get a list of the transaction codes within those modules. So in order to do that, we will be using these four tables. So in order to create the Sqvi report, execute the transaction code Sqvi. Give us a query name, the report name that you want to use. Let's say Z T code by modules. Let's say module. Okay, then hit on create. Give a description for the report. Now in the data source field, because you're going to use multiple tables, you need to use the table join option. Then click on continue. Click on the insert table button icon here on the toolbar to insert the tables for your report. So the first table that we had was df14vd. Enter the second table, which was tdef, which will give you the development packages for each of those modules. Now if you observe here, as soon as the second table was inserted, if there was a foreign key relationship between the two tables, the system will automatically create that link. So in df41vd, the field fctr_id is a foreign key component field in the tdef table. Now let us add the third table in our report that we want to include, or info_tran. And if you see here, even in this case, the relationship has been maintained between defc as well as info_tran. So the fourth table we included was tstct, from where we get the list of transaction codes as well as the descriptions of those transaction codes. And all the four tables, they are linked with at least one foreign key between the tables, if you see here, and the system is automatically creating that link. Now once these tables are joined with of key, now you will be able to pick data out of these four tables. Now let us go back, and the next step in this process will be to select the fields that you want to be part of your selection screen, as well as your output. So expand this window a little bit so that we can see the table names. So if you see, these are the 4 tables that we included. And if you expand this tree, you will get the fields from the tables. Now you can pick and the fields that you want to be part of your selection screen as well as your output. Now, let's say we want to have, because we want to list the transaction codes by modules. So one of the 2 fields that you would like to have in your selection screen would be the transaction code, and then another would be your module. Now, the sequence in which you select your fields is how they would appear in the selection screen as well as the output. So for example, if I select, let's say TSTC first, so in my selection screen and in the output, TSTC will appear first. So let us select the transaction codes and the fields that we want to be a part of our selection screen as well as the output. So I'm going to select the transaction code as my first field. Then I want to select the, let's say, transaction description. And then I would like to select the package from this. So let's say I select the software component out of the TDFC table. So I want it to be part of my selection screen as well as the output. Then I would like to also have the description of this particular component. So I would like to have the description. Let's say I want to have this. Okay, I don't want that to be part. Let's put that part of your selection screen. So, but it says do not use anymore. We'll see what happens after this. Next, I would like to also have from the other table, from DA14VD, I would like to have the language field as part of my output as well as selection screen. And then I would like to have the short text. And then let's say I'd like to have, what else do I need? The component I want. So I want to have the component. So you can select any field you want, which you think or you would like to have as part of your report and that are going to be useful. You can select those fields. Now, after you've selected your fields, right, you can save. And now let's go and check. Okay, so how do we know what these fields belong to, right? So one of the ways you can find out from where these fields are coming from, which table are these fields are coming from, you can click on this icon and it will toggle between the technical name and the description of that particular field. So it's a toggle. Okay, now let's go to the selections field tab and we'll see what all we had selected. We had selected this transaction code, the transaction text, software component, language key, application ID, etc. So once you have finalized, this is the sequence in which you want the selection screen to appear, and this is the sequence in which you want the report to appear, you can now go and execute the report. After you execute the report, you get the selection screen. And in the selection screen, you'll find the fields that you had selected for selection criteria. One of the fields that we had selected was transaction code. The other one was let's say, I'm talking about the key fields that you could probably end up using in this particular scenario. Transaction code is one. You could use the software component if you want to, and then you could probably use the component, application component ID. For example, you want to find out the transaction codes out of the controlling module, or sales and distribution module. So you could use the application component ID if you know it to get that list of transaction codes. Or otherwise you can use the transaction code pattern for each module and get the list of the entire list. So but you need to use the pattern here. So for example, if I use SU, which is basically related to security, mainly, we could use that as a pattern and execute. So you get a list of transaction codes that are part of that pattern. So let's put E in here too, for just in case, and execute it again, because earlier screen we got a list of from various languages too. So now you see we only get English language list with the transaction codes, the description of the transaction codes, the software component that they belong to, and the application component they belong to. So similarly, if you just give the application component in your selection screen, it will give you the list of transaction codes belonging to that particular application component ID. So these are the only transaction codes that are part of that component. Right? Now let's say you want to find out the transaction codes belonging to the controlling function module. Right? So you get all the transaction code belonging to the controlling module. These are the sub areas within controlling, and you have the controlling transaction codes. So these are the one. Similarly, you can do the same for, let's say, for example, module. So you get the list of submodules as well as the transaction codes from each of the submodules as well as the main module here. Now let's go back and see what else can we do with this query, right? Now, if I don't want to include a particular field in my query, in the report or the selection criteria, I can select that field and click on this icon here to remove that field. Right, so that field is gone. If you want to move the fields, the sequence of the fields in the selection screen as well as the, let's say, the output, you could always move them by selecting the screen, selecting the field, and you clicking this up and down arrow. So this will go up, go down, right? If you don't want it, you can go and remove it, select the field and then remove it also if you want to. Okay. So once you make the changes, save it, and then your query is now done. Your report is now created. Now one more last thing that you need to know, that every Sqvi report, the system helps you to generate, then generates a ABAP program too. So you go to Quick View, and then you say go to additional functions and then say generate program. So it generates the program name, but it doesn't display you the program name, right? So you can go back to quick view again, additional function, and then you click on the display report name. So it gives you this report, EQ, it begins with an EQ. It's a long and lengthy random name that it generates. But yeah, if you look at the end, it gives you the name of the query that you have created, the report that you have created. Now you can take this program, give it to your teammates, or you can go and execute this program using the transaction code SA38. So you can give this program name to your teammates if you think they could also use this report. It will be useful for them. You can go and execute it in SA38 and do the same thing. So this is the only way you can share this report or the query with your teammates. Otherwise, the query or the report that is created in Sqvi by a person can be used only by that creator, that person. Okay, so if your teammate goes to Sqvi, he cannot find or execute the program the report that you have created. So you need to remember that for using Sqvi, the table join condition, in the table join condition, the tables need to have a foreign key relationship between them. You just simply cannot randomly pick tables and then try to create a report. Okay, so tables have to have a foreign key relationship between them. That's the most important point for this particular tool.